Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we're going to put on our financial compliance officer hats and strictly audit exactly how we talk about changing currency values. You know, if you've ever watched the financial news and wondered why they sometimes say a currency depreciated, but then other times they say it was devalued, well, you are absolutely in the right place. We're going to build a crystal clear mental model for this, using only the facts pulled straight from our source material on the balance of payments and exchange rates. But before we can audit our vocabulary, we really have to establish our foundation, right? Everything we're diving into today hinges on just one core concept, the exchange rate. Simply put, this is the rate at which the currencies of different countries are traded or exchanged. It's essentially the global price tag of money. And without wrapping our heads around that, the rest of the terminology just isn't going to make much sense. So let's dive into the structure of how we'll break this down.
Here's our syllabus for the explainer. We'll start with the currency value confusion, look at the two exchange systems, explore flexible markets and free movement, move on to fixed systems and official actions, and then wrap it all up with the currency quadrant summary.
Let's kick things off with Section 1, the currency value confusion.
So, honestly ask yourself, are you misusing currency terms by swapping depreciation and devaluation? A lot of professionals actually unknowingly mix up these two words. They just kind of assume that because both terms mean a currency is generally losing value, they must be totally interchangeable. But as our source text makes crystal clear, they are definitely not synonyms. The specific context of how that currency is managed is literally everything. We absolutely have to identify that underlying context.
Which brings us right to Section 2, the two exchange systems.
Our first major rule of compliance today is that the correct term depends entirely on the system governing the currency, and there's a stark contrast here. Under a flexible exchange rate, the value is left totally free. It's determined by the invisible hands of the market, specifically the organic forces of demand and supply. On the flip side, under a fixed exchange rate, the rate is officially fixed by the central bank through deliberate action. So, in a flexible system, the free market is in the driver's seat, but in a fixed system, it's the central bank actively pulling the levers.
Moving on to Section 3, flexible markets and free movement.
Let's look at our first pair of terms. These strictly belong to that flexible system where values just fluctuate freely, no official intervention involved. First up is depreciation. According to our source, this refers to a fall in the free market value of domestic currency relative to the currencies of other countries. Honestly, the most important words in that definition are free market value. When purely organic market forces cause a drop, we have to use this precise term, depreciation.
Okay, let's look at the math right from the text to really see depreciation in action. Imagine that originally, $1 exchanged for 50 Indian rupees. But say after a shift in the market, that same dollar now exchanges for 55 rupees. Because the domestic currency has essentially fallen in value, you're now forced to pay more rupees just to get your hands on a single US dollar. And think about the real-world impact here. This market-driven shift makes imports like foreign electronics, maybe a new iPhone or a barrel of oil, much costlier for the domestic consumer.
Now conversely, we have appreciation. This is defined as a rise in the free market value of the domestic currency. Again, notice the underlying system we're talking about. This happens out there in the foreign exchange market, driven completely by demand and supply. Whenever the market naturally pushes your currency's value up, it appreciates.
Let's check out the numbers for appreciation. We'll start again at that baseline of $1 equaling 50 rupees. But this time around, market forces strengthened the rupee, shifting that rate to 48 rupees for a single dollar. As the math clearly shows, India is now paying fewer rupees per dollar. It's a stronger domestic currency on the open market, which ultimately means cheaper imported goods for everyone. Pretty great, right?
All right, let's pivot to Section 4, fixed systems and official actions.
Now we are stepping completely away from the free market to examine fixed exchange rates and our second pair of terms. In a fixed exchange rate system, the central bank stands ready to buy and sell its currency at a fixed price. That means changes in the currency's value aren't organic anymore. They are deliberate, official actions undertaken by the central bank itself. Those unpredictable free market forces of demand and supply, yeah, they're essentially replaced by a central calculated authority.
And that brings us perfectly to devaluation.
This refers to an action undertaken by the central bank to decrease the value of domestic currency relative to other currencies. So when the central bank intentionally steps in to artificially lower that official value, maybe they're trying to wipe out a deficit in their balance of payments by making exports cheaper for foreign buyers, we use the specific term devaluation. It's a deliberate action, absolutely not a market reaction.
Then on the flip side of that, we have revaluation. This is an action undertaken by the central bank to officially raise the value of the domestic currency. When a deliberate central authority action is specifically designed to artificially strengthen the currency, the only correct terminology you can use is revaluation. Finally, we arrive at Section 5, the Currency Quadrants Summary.
We've covered a ton of ground, so let's synthesize this into a foolproof mental model. This matrix is really the ultimate takeaway from this explainer. Just look at the outcomes. Devaluation and revaluation lead to the exact same results as depreciation and appreciation. The value of the currency either drops or it rises. But the catalyst is entirely different. Is it a flexible free market or is it a fixed central bank system? The underlying mechanism, market forces versus central bank action, is exactly what dictates the precise word we absolutely must use.
So, I'll leave you with a final question to investigate today. Think about it. Which currency system is your own economy operating in right now, and who is really pulling the levers of its value? Is it the invisible hand of the free market, or is it the deliberate pen of the central bank? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning the mechanics behind the money.